It was certainly no ordinary day for the science team in the desert. Chief Scientist Arthur noticed something stunning during a drone inspection. It was a ship in the middle of the desert. Mark and his entire team went to the ship, and once they arrived, they immediately went inside to inspect the ship. But little did they know that what they would find inside that ship would haunt everyone's lives. Before we start our story, smash the like button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Arthur got into the ship and immediately got chills from how the ship looked like. He hasn't seen anything like this before. It was already weird that a ship could end up in this desert, but he could have never foreseen what he was about to discover. While he was walking through the corridors, he noticed that every door was barricaded, which was quite strange because why would all these doors be barricaded? Arthur didn't find the motive in why doing so. Maybe something dangerous would be behind those doors? Arthur focused on one door in particular. There was a large door that was barricaded with heavy steel pipes and had a large sign with a skull on it that stated, "Do not enter this room. It holds much danger." Arthur hadn't seen anything like this before, but as a researcher, he was curious about what could be hidden there. Arthur experienced chills down his back and was a little bit afraid of what might be lying behind that door. But once more, he had a duty as a researcher to find out what was behind that door. Perhaps he will make the discovery of his lifetime. When Arthur got with his team, they also reported that they were observing strange things happening on the ship. Everywhere you went, there was just this creepy vibe. Even some scientists claimed to have heard sounds coming from certain rooms. Everybody laughed because there could not be something living on this ship, right? Arthur agrees with his colleagues that it's indeed a spooky ship. He had never seen anything like this before, and how did it even get in the desert? Arthur just had so many questions which he wanted to answer. But first, guys, I need to tell you something. It's something big. Well, I'm going to show you the room that I just saw. There was this door barricaded, and I saw a skull on it, but it got even weirder because there was also a light sound coming from it. We need to know what it is. Let's go. As they walked through the ship's corridors, everyone was silent because this ship really had a creepy vibe. It was so quiet, and yet it wasn't. Arthur had the impression that this ship was hiding something otherworldly, and he was determined to discover what. There was a loud noise coming from that room. Everyone could hear it clearly, and as Arthur looked at his team, he could see the horror in each of his colleagues' eyes. Everyone moved away from that door out of fear, but Arthur didn't. Arthur thought maybe there was a person inside that room. It would be very strange because it seemed like this ship had been here for decades. However, he needed to give it a shot, and he started shouting, "Is someone inside there?" He did this several times, but there was no response. Arthur repeated himself several times, but there was no response. Arthur felt a little distraught. It really seemed that something big was hiding inside. It didn't really sound like a person, but it was something otherworldly that came through clearly of the loud noise coming from that room. Just as Arthur was about to repeat himself for the last time, he heard another loud noise coming from the room. Arthur couldn't resist and had to know what was in there, so he decided to force the door open. Arthur tried to kick the door open with all the strength he had. Bang, bang, bang. Then another researcher took over kicking. Unfortunately, even with all the hard work of the explorers, they couldn't get the door open by kicking it. They had to use a tool to open that massive door. Arthur and his team went searching for a tool that could help them to force that door open. There must be something in that ship that could help them to force that door open. Arthur rushed to every room and searched for something he could use. After searching for 30 minutes, he finally found it. Arthur saw a crowbar lying in the corner of a room, and he knew this crowbar helped him to open that door. Arthur grabbed the crowbar and called out to his team that he had found a crowbar so everyone could stop searching and return to the door. Arthur rushed back to the door out of sheer excitement. With all his might, Arthur pressed the crowbar against the door, but it just wouldn't work. Then suddenly, they heard the loud sound again. What the heck is behind that door? Arthur was determined to find out what was behind that door. We need to get some tools from the base camp and then return. I can sense something significant is hidden in that room. To avoid getting lost, the next time they returned, Arthur and his team marked several of the corridors as they made their way back to the helicopter. Then next time, they could head straight for the door and discover what was in that room. As they flew back to base camp, Arthur could think of nothing but that room. That door intrigued him so much, and he felt there was something otherworldly in it. It would be the discovery of his life, and it would make him famous. During the flight, Arthur and his crew were debating what might be in that room. Because it's not something small, several people speculated that it might be a human. However, it made no comment in response to their questions. Others were consequently thinking about a creature that had never before been seen. As they arrived at their base camp, everyone quickly ran out of the helicopter and went to the workstation where they could grab all the electric saws and claw tools that could be useful to open the thick door of that mysterious room. They found everything and quickly returned to the helicopter. Once they arrived at the helicopter's pilot looked surprised. He said, "I'm not flying at this time. It's too late and too dangerous." Arthur would not accept this. He was convinced that he had found the discovery of a lifetime. Arthur tried to convince him with all the effort he got, but unfortunately, the pilot didn't yield. It was just too dangerous to fly around at this time in the middle of the desert. The pilot simply didn't want to risk his own life for it. Arthur understood the pilot's decision and agreed that they would return tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., but no later. As Arthur lay in bed, he just couldn't fall asleep. That door was burned into his memory, and he couldn't think of anything else. Maybe something had already been written about the ship on the internet. Arthur quickly grabbed his laptop and started searching on the internet. He opened his laptop and began looking for a deserted ship that had gone missing. Time flew by as he spent nearly an hour of searching. Then all of a sudden, he discovered something on the internet. Someone had written something about the shipwreck. A famous researcher he knew named James mentioned something about a ship in the desert, and it was the exact same location as where Arthur is now. Unfortunately, the content was censored, so there wasn't much written about it. However, Arthur had his connections in the research world. Arthur called a good colleague of his with which he did many discoveries with. He knew that this friend had even more connections than Arthur, so he might have James's number. Arthur gave him a call and explained the situation, and it turned out that he had the phone number of scientist James. Arthur glowed with energy. He could call the one man who had also been on that ghostly ship. He keyed in the numbers on his phone, and yes, the phone rang. It took a few seconds when Arthur heard a voice. "Hello, who is this?" Arthur explained to James why he was calling, detailing his discovery of the ship and the strange noises from a hidden room. James, sounding paranoid, warned Arthur not to return, insisting it would ruin his life. Arthur, puzzled by this reaction, asked why, but James refused to elaborate. Despite James's warning, Arthur couldn't resist. As a scientist, he saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. He decided to return the next morning. At breakfast, Arthur's colleagues asked if he had found more information. He chose to keep James's call a secret, simply stating that details about the ship had been censored online. Satisfied, the team prepared for the expedition. As they boarded the helicopter, Arthur wrestled with his decision. Was he putting them in danger? After nearly an hour of flight, they reached the ship, now equipped with better tools to force the door open. As they navigated the corridors, everyone noticed something was different. Doors once barricaded were now open. A chill ran through Arthur. Someone had been here, but who? Despite unease, they pressed on. Arthur had marked the path to the locked room, and upon arrival, they saw it was still barricaded. The team immediately set to work drilling. A loud noise erupted from inside, startling them, but they continued. The sound repeated, as if something inside was resisting their entry. Undeterred, they pushed forward until, at last, the door gave way. Arthur stepped in cautiously, sweeping his flashlight across the space. Suddenly, something large bolted past him. Without hesitation, he chased it. Beyond the door was not just a room, but an entire network of corridors. Arthur caught a glimpse of the fleeing figure. It looked human. He shouted, "Stop!" But the person kept running. Mustering his strength, Arthur sprinted and tackled them to the ground. The figure fought back violently, reeking of decay. Finally, Arthur gained control and turned them over. His breath caught. It was the very scientist who had written about the ship online. Confused, Arthur realized that the post had been from years ago. Had this man been here all along? The scientist, James, confessed he had chosen to stay, unable to leave the ghost ship. Arthur urged him to return, but James refused. He begged Arthur not to expose his secret. Respecting his wishes, Arthur agreed. Arthur and his team left the ship, and they were all disappointed that this discovery was not the discovery of their lifetime.